March 6th, 1944. 27,000 feet above Schweinfurt, Germany. The air is so cold it burns. Lieutenant James Harrington can feel it seeping through every seam of his leather flight jacket, through the layers of wool and silk beneath, straight into his bones. His breath comes out in shallow, frosted clouds inside his oxygen mask as he scans the sky around his B-17 flying fortress, the Memphis Queen. 9 men share this aluminum tube with him, suspended in the frozen void 5 miles above the earth, and every single one of them knows they're flying into hell. Below, through breaks in the clouds, Germany spreads out like a gray quilt stitched with roads and rivers. Somewhere down there, ball-bearing factories churn out components vital to the Nazi war machine. Harrington's squadron has been ordered to destroy them. It's their 3rd mission over Germany, and already they've lost 11 aircraft from their original formation, 33 empty bunks back at Thorpe Abbotts, 33 sets of personal effects packed into brown paper parcels and shipped home to families who'll never see their sons again. The bomber stream extends for miles, 317 B-17 bombers from the 8th Air Force flying in tight combat boxes, each fortress bristling with 50 caliber machine guns. From a distance, the formation looks impenetrable, a flying armada of American industrial might. But Harrington knows the truth. He's seen what happens when the escorts turn back. "Escorts peeling off," crackles the voice of Captain Miller, his aircraft commander, over the intercom. P-47s at maximum range. Harrington watches as the Republic P-47 Thunderbolts that have shepherded them this far waggle their wings in farewell and bank toward home. The big radial-engined fighters are magnificent aircraft, heavily armed, rugged, capable of absorbing tremendous punishment, but they're also limited by their range. With external fuel tanks, they can make it perhaps 475 miles from base, no further. And Schweinfurt lies deep in the heart of Germany, well beyond that protective umbrella. Now, the bombers are on their own. "Pilot to crew," Miller's voice comes again, tighter now. "We're in Indian country, eyes sharp. They'll be coming, they always do. The Luftwaffe has learned to wait. German radar stations track the American formations from the moment they cross the coast. Controllers plot their course, calculate their target, and vector fighter squadrons to intercept points beyond the range of American escorts. It's a deadly mathematics, and the Germans have perfected the equation. The Americans bring their bombers deep into the Reich, but they cannot protect them. Not here, not this far." Harrington adjusts his flak vest and checks his parachute harness for the 3rd time. Through his side window, he can see other B-17 holding formation, so close he can make out the faces of other waist gunners watching their sectors. Closer still, almost close enough to touch, flies Lucky Strike, her nose art depicting a reclining pin-up girl. Last week, Lucky Strike took a 20mm cannon shell through the cockpit. The co-pilot bled out before they made it home. A new co-pilot sits in that seat today, a kid barely 20 years old who'd never even fired his service pistol before arriving in England. "Contacts! Contacts! 12 o'clock high!" The call comes from the nose gunner, Sergeant Davis, and suddenly the radio erupts with voices, calm professionalism giving way to controlled urgency. "Focke-Wulfs, coming in level. I got 109s, 9 o'clock low, climbing. Jesus Christ, there must be 40 of them." Harrington swings his .50 caliber to track the incoming fighters. They're coming in from dead ahead, the way the Luftwaffe pilots have learned to attack. Head-on passes that minimize their exposure to the bombers' defensive fire and maximize the psychological impact on the American crews. A closing speed of over 500 miles per hour. Seconds to aim, no room for error. The Focke-Wulf 19s open fire at 1,000 yards, their wing-mounted cannons winking orange in the thin sunlight. Harrington squeezes his trigger, feeling the heavy machine gun hammer against his shoulder, watching his tracers arc out toward the lead fighter. The noise is overwhelming. The roar of engines, the staccato bark of machine guns, the sharp crack of cannon shells exploding against aluminum skin. Or a B-17 3 positions ahead takes a direct hit. One moment it's there, holding formation. The next, its left wing separates from the fuselage in a shower of flame and debris. The fortress rolls inverted, tumbling out of the sky like a broken toy. Harrington counts 3 parachutes, only 3. The rest of the crew, 7 men, ride the wreckage down. The Focke-Wulfs flash past through the formation, already banking for another pass. Behind them, Messerschmitt Bf-109s position themselves for their own attack runs. The 109s are smaller, more nimble, painted in splinter camouflage of gray and green. Harrington can see the black crosses on their fuselages, the yellow spinners on their propellers. "Right waist to pilot, we got a problem," the voice cuts off. Through the fuselage, Harrington hears a different sound, the whistle of slipstream through torn metal. Someone is screaming. The intercom is chaos now, multiple voices trying to report damage, casualties, enemy positions. Another bomber falls out of formation, trailing smoke from two engines. Then another. The Luftwaffe fighters are relentless, pressing their attacks despite the wall of defensive fire the bombers throw up. For every German fighter that goes down trailing flame, two more seem to appear. This is the reality of the combined bomber offensive in early 1944. The Americans fly deep, but they fly blind and vulnerable once the escorts turn back. The Germans know it, they exploit it, and American boys die because of it. Major Wilhelm Batz of Jagdgeschwader 52 pulls his Bf-109 G6 into a steep climbing turn, clearing his 6 o'clock, searching for his next target. He's already claimed 2 B-17s this morning, their kills confirmed by his wingman. The Americans are brave, he'll give them that. Brave and foolish. They come in their hundreds, day after day, and the Luftwaffe bleeds them. They will never make it this far, Batz had told his squadron over breakfast that morning, spreading jam on black bread. Not to Berlin. Not to the heart of the Reich. Their fighters cannot reach us here, so we wait until the escorts turn back, and then we feast. The other pilots had laughed, nodding in agreement. It was the way of things. Let the Americans penetrate deep into German airspace. Let them think they can strike with impunity. But once their guardian angels abandon them, once they're alone in hostile skies, the Luftwaffe strikes. Hard, without mercy. Batz rolls his 109 and dives toward another formation of B-17s. His Daimler-Benz engine screams as he builds speed. At 400 miles per hour, he opens fire, his 20mm cannon and machine guns raking the lead bomber from nose to tail. He sees his strikes walking along the fuselage, sparking against metal. Then, he's through, pulling up hard, the G-forces pressing him into his seat. This is the game. This is how Germany defends itself, and for now, the game is working. But something is coming, something the German pilots don't yet know about, something that will change everything. 8th Air Force Headquarters, High Wycombe, England, March 7, 1944. Major General James H. Doolittle stands before a wall-sized map of Europe, his jaw tight, his eyes moving across colored pins that represent yesterday's losses. Each pin is a fortress. Each fortress carried 10 men. The mathematics are simple and brutal. 16 bombers, he says quietly. Schweinfurt cost us 16 bombers, plus another 23 damaged beyond immediate repair. Behind him, his staff officers wait in silence. They know what this means. 16 bombers represent 160 highly trained crewmen, dead, captured, or wounded. 23 damaged aircraft mean reduced sortie rates, decreased striking power, extended repair times, and Schweinfurt was just one mission, just one day. Colonel Hubert Zemke, commander of the 56th Fighter Group, steps forward. His P-47 pilots flew the Schweinfurt escort mission yesterday. They'd done everything they could, shepherding the bombers as far as their fuel would allow, engaging every Luftwaffe fighter they could find. But eventually, mathematics trumped courage. The P-47's combat radius, even with drop tanks, topped out around 475 miles. Beyond that, the bombers were on their own. "The Thunderbolt is a hell of a fighter, sir," Zemke says, "but we can't take it where it needs to go." Doolittle nods. He knows. Everyone in this room knows. The P-47 is too heavy, its Pratt & Whitney radial engine too thirsty. The P-38 Lightning, the other American fighter in theater, has greater range but suffers from technical problems at high altitude. Engines that won't operate properly in the extreme cold, control systems that freeze. The Luftwaffe has learned to exploit these weaknesses. "Berlin," Doolittle says, tapping the map where a large red circle marks the German capital. "We need to hit Berlin, not once, but repeatedly. We need to demonstrate that nowhere in Germany is safe from American air power. But we can't do that if we're losing 5% of our force every time we fly deep penetration missions. The room is silent. Everyone present understands the stakes. The combined bomber offensive is the Western Allies' primary contribution to the war effort before the invasion of France. Strategic bombing is supposed to cripple German industry, destroy the Luftwaffe, and pave the way for the cross-channel invasion planned for June. But if the bomber losses continue at the current rate, there won't be an 8th Air Force left by summer. What about the new fighter? Asks Colonel Donald Blakesley, commander of the 4th Fighter Group. The one with the British engine? Doolittle turns. The Mustang? Yes, sir. I've seen the specs. The P-51B with the Packard Merlin. The numbers look good. Very good. Doolittle has seen those numbers too. On paper, the P-51B Mustang is exactly what the 8th Air Force needs. A fighter with the range to escort bombers to Berlin and back, the performance to match or exceed anything the Luftwaffe can field, and the reliability to operate day after day in the brutal conditions over Europe. But paper specifications don't always translate to combat effectiveness. The first P-51B groups are becoming operational now, Doolittle says. We'll see what they can do. But gentlemen, understand this. We don't have the luxury of time. The invasion is coming. We need air superiority over Germany before D-Day, which means we need to destroy the Luftwaffe. And we can't destroy the Luftwaffe if our fighters can't reach the battle space. The meeting continues. Discussions of tactics, logistics, replacement rates, training pipelines. But everyone in the room knows the central truth. Everything hinges on the escort fighters. The bombers can reach any target in Germany. They've proven that. But without fighter protection, they're just targets themselves. Across the Channel, in countless Luftwaffe bases scattered across Germany and occupied Europe, German pilots sleep easy. They've seen American fighters before. P-47s are dangerous but short-legged. P-38s are impressive but troubled. And the Germans have hundreds of experienced pilots, men who've been flying combat missions since 1939, aces with dozens of kills to their names, men like Adolf Galland with over 100 victories, men like Gerhard Barkhorn, who would end the war with 301 kills. These men know the Americans cannot protect their bombers all the way to Berlin. Physics won't allow it, fuel capacity won't allow it, so the Luftwaffe waits, conserves its strength, and strikes when the conditions are favorable, when the American escorts have turned for home and the bombers are alone. It's a sustainable strategy, or so the Germans believe. North American Aviation, Inglewood, California, late 1940. The story of the P-51 Mustang begins not with grand strategic vision, but with a desperate improvisation born of necessity. In 1940, the British Purchasing Commission approaches North American Aviation with an urgent request. Britain is at war, alone against Nazi Germany after the fall of France. The Royal Air Force is bleeding aircraft and pilots in the skies over England. They need fighters, lots of them, fast. The British want North American to build P-40 Warhawks under license immediately. But James Dutch Kindleberger, president of North American, makes a counteroffer. Give us 120 days and we'll design you something better. The British are skeptical. North American has never built a fighter aircraft. The company's experience lies in trainers and light bombers. Designing a combat-capable fighter from scratch in 4 months seems impossible. But Britain is desperate enough to gamble. The design team, led by Chief Engineer Edgar Schmood, works around the clock. They're not trying to reinvent aviation, they're trying to solve specific problems. The P-40 is handicapped by high drag and inadequate cooling. The solution? A revolutionary laminar flow wing that reduces drag and a ventral scoop that provides efficient engine cooling while creating thrust through the Meredith effect. The prototype, designated N-73X, rolls out of the Inglewood factory in September 1940, just 102 days after the British order. It flies on October 26th. The test pilots are impressed. The aircraft is fast, handles beautifully, and has excellent range. The British order 320 aircraft on the spot. But there's a problem. A serious one. The Mustang Mk1, as the British designate it, uses an Allison 5 1710 engine. The Allison is a fine power plant at low and medium altitudes, but above 15,000 feet its performance falls off dramatically. It lacks a two-stage supercharger, the technology needed to maintain power in thin air. And combat over Europe happens at high altitude, 20,000 feet and above, where the Allison-powered Mustang is decidedly mediocre. The RAF relegates the Mustang Mk1 to low-altitude tactical reconnaissance and ground attack roles. It's useful work, but not what anyone envisioned for such a promising airframe. The Americans, focused on their own fighter programs, show little interest. The P-38 and P-47 seem to offer everything the Army Air Forces needs. The Mustang could have ended there, a footnote, a capable but limited aircraft relegated to secondary missions. But in early 1942, a British test pilot named Ronald Harker flies a Mustang Mky at the Rolls-Royce facility at Hucknall. Harker immediately recognizes what the Americans and British have missed. The Mustang's superb airframe is being handicapped by an inadequate engine. If this aircraft had a Rolls-Royce Merlin, Harker writes in his report, it would be phenomenal. The Merlin, the same engine that powers the legendary Spitfire, features a two-stage, two-speed supercharger that maintains power at high altitude. It's more powerful than the Allison, more reliable, and battle-proven. Harker's suggestion triggers a series of tests. A Mustang is fitted with a Merlin 61 engine and put through its paces. The results exceed even optimistic projections. With the Merlin, the Mustang transforms. Top speed increases to 441 miles per hour at 29,800 feet. Rate of climb improves dramatically. The service ceiling jumps to over 41,000 feet. And most importantly, the Mustang retains its exceptional range, over 1,300 miles with internal fuel, extendable to 2,000 miles with external drop tanks. Suddenly, the airplane nobody wanted becomes the airplane everyone needs. In the United States, Packard begins license production of the Merlin, designated the V-1650. North American redesigns the Mustang around the new engine, creating the P-51B model. The redesign includes a four-blade propeller, modified cooling system, and relocated air intake. The British order hundreds, the Americans order thousands. By late 1943, the first P-51B Mustangs begin arriving in England, assigned to fighter groups of the 8th Air Force. The pilots who transition from P-47s and P-38s are initially skeptical. The Mustang looks small compared to the burly Thunderbolt. It lacks the P-38's twin-engine redundancy. Can this sleek, almost delicate-looking fighter really survive in the brutal skies over Germany? Captain Don Gentle of the 4th Fighter Group flies his first P-51B mission in early December 1943. When he lands, he's grinning ear to ear. "Boys," he tells his squadron mates, "we just got our ticket to Berlin, January 11th, 1944, 24,000 feet above Halberstadt, Germany." Captain James Goodson eases his P-51B into a gentle turn, scanning the sky above and below. This is his first long-range escort mission in the Mustang, and he's acutely aware that he's flying deeper into Germany than he's ever been before. Behind him, stretched across miles of sky, 300 B-17 and B-24s drone toward their targets in central Germany. The Americans have designated this mission Argument, an ironic code name for what amounts to a massive aerial assault on German aircraft production facilities. If successful, these raids will cripple the Luftwaffe's ability to replace losses. If unsuccessful, well, Goodson tries not to think about what failure might look like. His P-51B, dubbed Mary Lou after his wife, feels light and responsive beneath him. After months flying the heavyweight P-47, the Mustang's handling is a revelation. It's nimble, almost sports car-like in its responsiveness. The Packard Merlin engine purrs smoothly at 2,300 RPM, burning fuel at a miserly rate that still amazes him. "Tally-ho! Bandits, 2 o'clock high, coming down." The call comes from his element leader. Goodson's eyes snap to the indicated position. There, 4 Messerschmitt Bf-10-9s diving out of the sun, obviously expecting to find vulnerable bombers. Instead, they're about to encounter something new. Goodson advances his throttle and pulls his nose up to meet the threat. The Merlin responds instantly, power building smoothly as he climbs. The lead 109 opens fire at 800 yards, tracers arcing between them, but Goodson holds his fire, closing the distance, waiting for the shot. At 400 yards, he squeezes the trigger. 6.50 caliber machine guns roar, concentrated firepower converging on the enemy fighter. His rounds strike the 109's left wing root and engine cowling. Smoke streams back. The German fighter rolls inverted and dives away, trailing fire. The other three 109s break in different directions, apparently shocked to find American fighters this deep into Germany. Goodson pursues the nearest one, the Mustang accelerating in the dive with ease. The 109 pilot is good. He jinks, rolls, tries to shake his pursuer, but the Mustang stays with him through every maneuver. They told us the Mustang could turn with a 109, Goodson will later write in his combat report. They were right. It can turn with a 109. It can do everything a 109 can do, and it can do it better. Goodson gets another firing opportunity at 300 yards, a deflection shot that requires leading the target. His tracers walk across the 109's fuselage. The canopy shatters. The fighter snap rolls left and goes down streaming debris. Across the battle space, other P-51s are engaging Luftwaffe fighters with similar results. The Germans are unprepared for this. They've grown accustomed to American fighters turning back, leaving the bombers vulnerable. Now, suddenly, the Americans are here, this far into Germany, and their fighters are fast, maneuverable, and deadly. Major Heinz Baer of Jagdgeschwader 1, a veteran with 204 kills to his credit, engages a formation of P-51s near Oschersleben. He approaches from behind and below, intending a classic bounce. But before he can set up his attack, one of the Mustangs brakes hard and reverses on him. The maneuver is so sudden, so precise, that Baer barely has time to react. The two fighters merge in a turning fight, each trying to position behind the other. Baer uses every trick he knows: split S, vertical scissors, rolling maneuvers designed to force an overshoot. Nothing works. The Mustang matches him turn for turn, and Baer realizes with growing alarm that his adversary can sustain tighter turns at higher speeds than his FW-190. "This is not possible," he mutters into his oxygen mask. "American fighters aren't supposed to be this good, not this far from home, not with this performance." Baer disengages, diving away at full throttle. The Mustang doesn't pursue, smart tactics, staying with the bombers rather than chasing a fleeing fighter into a potential trap. Baer returns to base shaken. That evening, he tells his squadron, "We have a problem, a serious problem. The January missions continue through the month. The P-51Bs demonstrate again and again that they can escort bombers deep into Germany and hold their own against the best the Luftwaffe can offer. Bomber losses drop noticeably when Mustang groups provide escort. The math is undeniable. But the real test is still coming." Berlin, March 3, 1944. RAF Debden, England. Lieutenant William Bill Overstreet, Jr. sits in the cockpit of his P-51B, running through his pre-flight checklist for the third time. Around him, across the fog-shrouded airfield, 60 other Mustangs are being prepared for the mission. This is it, the big one, Berlin. Never before have American fighters attempted to reach the German capital. It's 580 miles from England, deep in the heart of the Reich, protected by hundreds of flak batteries and fighter squadrons. The brass have been planning this mission for weeks, waiting for the right conditions. Today, the weather is clear over the target. Today, they're going. "All set, Lieutenant." His crew chief, Sergeant Murphy, stands on the wing, watching Overstreet work through the checklist. "All set, Murph. She ready?" "She's ready." "Bring her home, sir." Overstreet nods. He's flown 16 combat missions already, claimed 3 victories. But this is different. This is Berlin. This is history. At 0945 hours, the first Mustangs begin rolling. One by one, they lift off into the gray English morning, forming up in flights of 4, then squadrons, then groups. The bomber stream left an hour ago, 814 heavy bombers heading east. The fighters will catch up, providing escort the entire way. The flight across the North Sea and Holland is routine. or as routine as flying into enemy territory can be. German radar tracks them from the moment they cross the coast, but no fighters rise to challenge them yet. The Luftwaffe is conserving strength, waiting to see where the bombers are heading, preparing to mass its forces for maximum effect. Overstreet checks his fuel gauges. The P-51 carries 184 gallons internally, plus two 75-gallon drop tanks. With careful fuel management, he has enough to reach Berlin, patrol the target area, fight if necessary, and return home with a small reserve. It's tight, but doable. The mission planners have calculated every gallon. At 1200 hours, they cross into German airspace. Below, the landscape is patchwork fields and forests, small towns, roads threading through the countryside. It looks peaceful from 5 miles up. But Overstreet knows better. Every city down there has flak batteries. Every airfield houses fighters. Germany is a fortress, and they're flying into the heart of it. Tally-ho! Tally-ho! 109S and 190S, 11 o'clock high, coming down. The German fighters have finally engaged. Overstreet counts at least 30 in the initial wave, diving from above, splitting into pairs as they set up their attacks on the bomber stream. His flight leader banks left to intercept. Blue Flight, take the 109s. Stay with the bombers unless you have a clean shot. The Luftwaffe pilots are aggressive, determined to break up the bomber formations before they can reach Berlin. But now they face something new. American fighters that can go the distance, that don't have to worry about fuel reserves, that can engage fully and without reservation. A Bf-109 flashes past Overstreet's nose, too close, the pilot having misjudged his attack run. Overstreet rolls inverted and pulls through, coming out on the Germans 6 o'clock. The 109 pilot sees him, brakes hard right, but the Mustang stays with him. Overstreet fires a 2-second burst, hits Sparkle along the 109's wing. The German fighter rolls away trailing smoke. More German fighters appear. Jagdgeschwader 11, JG-3, JG-27, elite units pulled from across the Reich to defend the capital. The sky becomes a chaotic furball of twisting, turning aircraft, contrails streaming behind them like white ribbons against the blue. At 12:45 hours, Lieutenant Overstreet sees it. Berlin. The city spreads out below, massive and sprawling, the Spree River cutting through its center, the Brandenburg Gate and Reichstag just visible through industrial haze. Flak bursts dot the sky in ugly black puffs, hundreds of them, a deadly wall of exploding steel. The bombers fly straight through it, maintaining formation, bomb bay doors opening, and escorting them, silver flecks in the afternoon sunlight, American fighters, Mustangs, over Berlin. Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring witnesses it from his headquarters at Karenhall, 40 miles north of the city. An aide rushes in with the report, American bombers over Berlin, escorted by single-engine fighters. Göring, who'd promised Hitler that no enemy bomber would ever reach the capital, stares at the teletype in silence. Later, he will tell his staff, "When I saw Mustangs over Berlin, I knew the jig was up." The psychological impact is devastating. For German civilians, seeing American fighters escort bombers over their capital is proof that the war is going badly. For Luftwaffe pilots, it's a bitter revelation. The Americans have solved the range problem. Nowhere is safe anymore. For the Americans, it's validation. The P-51 Mustang works. The strategy works. They can strike anywhere in Germany and protect their bombers doing it. The bombers drop their loads and turn for home. The Mustangs stay with them, fending off repeated Luftwaffe attacks all the way back to the Dutch coast. Of the 814 bombers that launched that morning, 799 return. The escort fighters have done their job. March 3rd, 1944 marks a turning point. The Luftwaffe will continue to fight, will continue to inflict losses, but the balance of power has shifted irreversibly. American fighters can reach Berlin. And if they can reach Berlin, they can reach anywhere. April through May 1944. The skies over Germany. The Mustangs come again and again, every day the weather permits. Berlin, Munich, Vienna, Leipzig, Brunswick, Augsburg. No target is too far. No mission is beyond reach. Luftwaffe ace, Major Walter Wolfram of JG-52 returns from a mission over Brunswick in late April. His Bf-109G6 shows fresh bullet holes from a P-51 encounter. His mechanic counts 7 strikes on the vertical stabilizer alone. Wolfram is lucky to be alive. In the squadron ready room, he strips off his flight gear and accepts a cigarette from his wingman. His hands shake slightly as he lights it. He's 24 years old and has been flying combat missions since 1942. He survived the Eastern Front, where he claimed 17 Soviet aircraft. He survived the defense of the Reich, but today was different. The P-51 is something else, he tells the assembled pilots. His voice is quiet but carries in the silent room. Whatever we could do, it could do too, and better. Faster in the dive, better in the turn, more range, more endurance, and there are so many of them. Another pilot speaks up, Lieutenant Hans Berger, newer to the squadron, only 6 missions. Can we beat them? Wolfram considers the question. Individually? Sometimes. If we have the altitude advantage, if we catch them by surprise, if everything goes right, yes, we can beat them. But we're not fighting individuals, we're fighting hundreds of them, and they just keep coming. This is the reality of spring 1944 for the Luftwaffe. They're still skilled, still dangerous, still capable of inflicting painful losses, but they're fighting a war of attrition they cannot win. For every P-51 they shoot down, the Americans can replace it with 3 more. For every pilot they kill, the Americans have 5 in training, and the Mustangs are everywhere. Major George Preddy of the 352nd Fighter Group becomes the top Mustang ace in the European theater, with 26.83 victories. The fractional score comes from shared kills. He describes the P-51's dominance in his combat reports. The 109 and 190 are good aircraft flown by brave men, but the Mustang is better. We can outturn them, outclimb them, outdive them, and we can stay with them as long as it takes. Captain Don Gentle and Lieutenant John Godfrey, flying together as a team from the 4th Fighter Group, claimed 21 combined victories in just 12 days of operations in April. Their tactics are straightforward: escort the bombers, engage any threat, pursue relentlessly. The Mustang's range allows them to hunt German fighters all the way to their bases and back. The impact on bomber losses is dramatic. In October 1943, before the widespread deployment of Mustangs, the 8th Air Force lost 9.2% of bombers dispatched on missions over Germany, an unsustainable rate. By May 1944, with Mustang groups providing deep escort, the loss rate drops to 3.5%, still painful, still representing hundreds of American lives, but survivable, sustainable. The Luftwaffe responds by changing tactics. Unable to engage on equal terms, German fighters increasingly use hit-and-run attacks, diving through bomber formations at high speed, firing briefly, then extending away before the escorts can react. It's less effective than sustained attacks, but safer for the German pilots. Jagdgeschwader. Commanders plead with Luftwaffe High Command for better aircraft, more fuel, more pilots. They receive promises but little else. Germany's oil production is being pounded by Allied bombing. Pilot training has been cut to minimal levels. New Luftwaffe pilots arrive at the front with as few as 160 flight hours, compared to American pilots who have 400-plus hours before seeing combat. And still, the Mustangs come. On May 8, 1944, a massive American raid targets Brunswick and Berlin simultaneously. Over 1,300 heavy bombers participate, protected by 875 escort fighters, the majority P-51 Mustangs. The Luftwaffe launches every available fighter, over 400 aircraft, in a desperate attempt to break the formations. The resulting air battle sprawls across 1,000 square miles. Contrails from hundreds of aircraft etch the sky. Wreckage tumbles earthward, German and American both, but the casualty ratio heavily favors the Americans. They lose 46 bombers and 9 fighters. The Germans lose 135 fighters with 70 pilots killed. For the Luftwaffe, it's unsustainable. They cannot trade losses at this rate. They cannot maintain operational strength when every mission costs them 100 pilots and 100 irreplaceable aircraft. General Lieutenant Adolf Galland, general of the fighter arm, writes in his diary, May 8th was a dark day. We threw everything we had against the Americans and were beaten decisively. The Mustang has tipped the balance against us. I do not see how we can defend the Reich if this continues. It will continue, every day, until the end. June 1944. The skies over France and Germany, the invasion of Normandy on June 6th, marks a new phase of the air war. With Allied forces establishing a foothold in France, the strategic situation shifts. The Luftwaffe must now defend on two fronts, against the heavy bombers striking deep into Germany and against the tactical air forces supporting the ground campaign. The Mustang groups adapt. Some squadrons remain dedicated to bomber escort, others take on fighter sweeps, ranging ahead of the bomber streams, seeking out German fighters before they can engage the heavies. Still others transition to ground attack, using the P-51's 6.50 caliber and bomb-carrying capability to strafe and bomb enemy positions. The fighter sweep missions are particularly effective. Without the constraint of staying with the bombers, Mustang pilots can chase German fighters wherever they go, to their airfields, to their refueling bases, even to their training schools. Lieutenant Urban Ben Drew of the 361 Fighter Group shoots down two Bf-109s on June 21st, then follows the surviving German fighters to their base at Stendal. He makes 3 strafing passes across the airfield, destroying 4 more aircraft on the ground before departing at treetop level, German flak chasing him all the way. The Mustang revolutionized how we fought, Drew later writes. We weren't just defending anymore. We were hunting. The Germans couldn't hide. We could go anywhere, stay as long as necessary, and bring the fight to them. The psychological effect on the Luftwaffe is devastating. German pilots, already outnumbered and under-resourced, now face the constant threat of attack even at their own bases. Landing after a mission doesn't mean safety. American fighters orbit nearby, waiting for exhausted German pilots to commit to their landing pattern, wheels down, flaps extended, vulnerable. Hauptmann Heinz Knoke of JG-11 describes the experience in his diary. We are being hunted in our own skies. They wait for us to land, to refuel, to rearm. There is no rest, no sanctuary. The Mustangs are everywhere, and they have the fuel to wait us out. By midsummer 1944, the Luftwaffe was on the brink. Pilot losses were catastrophic, with hundreds of young, inexperienced men sent into combat and killed within hours. Oberleutnant Franz Stiegler trained these replacements, lamenting, "We're sending them to die." 19-year-old Lieutenant Peter Zimmermann died on only his second mission, taken down by a P-51 Mustang from the 357th Fighter Group. The P-51 changed the air war. By 1944, Mustang pilots dominated escort missions, dramatically increasing German losses. Kill ratios shifted in favor of the Americans. By late 1944, nearly 5 German aircraft were destroyed for every Mustang lost. Even elite Luftwaffe pilots like Major Walter Nowotny in the Me-262 jet fell to Mustangs when tactical disadvantages and overwhelming numbers caught them at vulnerable moments. By autumn, the 8th Air Force achieved air superiority. P-51s no longer just escorted bombers, they hunted the Luftwaffe across Germany, destroying fighters and infrastructure. Massive sweeps in November 1944 left German pilots outnumbered and outmatched. Strategic desperation followed, but fuel shortages and inexperienced pilots made any counterattack impossible. Operations like Bodenplatte in January 1945 achieved little. German losses were irreplaceable. In 1945, Luftwaffe operations dwindled as fuel shortages, and P-51 dominance made sorties deadly. Veteran aces like Lieutenant Günther Rall faced overwhelming odds, flying against superior numbers with young, undertrained pilots. The final battles in April saw near-total destruction of German flights by P-51s. By May 8th, Germany surrendered. The P-51 Mustang had destroyed nearly 5,000 German aircraft in the air and over 4,000 on the ground. Surviving Luftwaffe pilots acknowledged its decisive impact. Johannes Steinhoff said, "Once they could escort bombers to Berlin and beyond, we couldn't defend Germany." Günther Rall called it the best fighter of the war. Walter Krupinski noted, When the Mustangs first appeared over Berlin, we knew the war was over. For American pilots like Lieutenant Robert Johnson, the Mustang symbolized victory. It was more than a machine. It represented skill, strategy, and industrial power. With it, the Allies could strike anywhere, reaching Berlin and securing air dominance. The shadow of the Mustang had fallen across the Reich, and the war in the air was won.